That's one of the reasons John Stockwell got turned off on the CIA. He became personally attached to some of the people he worked with in some of his operations and didn't like to see them get beat up or murdered or whatever once he left and the operation had collapsed.
Right. Well, there's one of the people interviewed in the film, Joseph Burkholder Smith. He describes the nature of your relationship with an agent as just, it's like being a con man working on the mark. In other words, working on your target. The only person who doesn't know what the game is your target, and you simply are, you lure him in with whatever it is. It can be blackmail, sex, money, it can be ideology. But you have a plan for him or her that they're not aware of, and you simply, and so there's dishonesty at the very basis of the relationship.
What about other countries besides Mexico? You said, what, 38
Well, the film's in 35 to 38 countries. It's been released, or will be released in just about every European country, or it's been on television in a lot of Latin American countries and some African countries, in Australia, New Zealand. It's been at 15 to 18 film festivals.
And won some prizes?
Right. At the two prizes, at the two festivals it competed, it won the top prize. It could not compete in Cannes because it had been at the Berlin Festival.
Well, what about the new information about the CIA that's come out recently? Do you have any taps to what's going on? Any books that are coming out, for instance?
Well, I know of a couple of books coming out, including there's a new book coming out by someone who worked in Vietnam and Thailand. His name is Ralph McGehee, which should be coming out in the next few months. But I think you can see, if you see on Company Business and the kind of methods the CIA has used over the past, you can see their hand in a lot of different parts of the world. For instance, I don't know, President Carter just admitted, I think in last week's Newsweek or Time, that during the hostage crisis, the United States was using media cover to get its agents into Iran. And of course the Iranian government at that time was saying that, and none of the media were covering it. And
well, they kicked all the media out at one point on that ground, and people thought they were just being paranoid.
Yes.
But here's Carter admitting that they were justified from their point of view.
Right, and you're in the kind of situation where you find all of these things are happening, and you know, some country accuses the United States of doing something, and the American media just ignores it or ridicules it. And then 5 years later, you find out that, in fact, that
they'd done all that and more.
And more.
In fact, there was just a document that was leaked to the Washington Post last week, which was a, 60-some page document put together by the House of Representatives, not exactly a radical group, listing all of the CIA operations in Central America over the last few years and being quite critical of some of them. Did you get any information on that? Have you seen the booklet yet? Or?
No, I haven't seen the booklet yet, but you can see, for instance, in Central America, it has to be one of the arenas where they're extremely active. Well, they've admitted that they're channeling $19 million into covert programs against Nicaragua.
Isn't that something new, where they're actually coming out and saying, okay, we're doing this?
It is new and it isn't new, you see, because you know what it really is? It's like telling somebody, look, I have this big club here, and either you do, and I'm telling you I've got this club, and either you do what I want, or I'm going to hit you over the head. And it's meant to intimidate, it's meant to frighten, it's meant to have people moderate their position. So it's not, because you have to realize that, for instance, during the CIA's program against Cuba, I have, for instance, I must have 5 hours of material which was filmed by the American media, including I have material which shows in 1961 Frank Sturgis training Cuban liberation fighters in the Everglades, which obviously he was working for the CIA then.
Right.
The CIA station in Miami arranged for them to film.
He was one of the people in Watergate.
Yes, one of the Watergate.
And so possibly the Kennedy assassination.
The Kennedy assassination,
his name.
right. He pops up everywhere.
Right.
But you're in the kind of situation where you have the same thing happening now in Honduras, and you have the same, and you have photographs being taken of people training in Miami and in California, and it's just like Miami in the early '60s. And if you actually sit down and watch this footage and look at the statements, I mean, you can see them circulating the same press releases almost, except changing the country from Cuba to Nicaragua.
You mentioned Cuba. I can't recall how much you went into this in your film. Was this a major topic? And wasn't there also a book recently that came out by Warren Hinkle, who's a friend of yours, that documents the U.S. operations against Cuba? What's the name of that book?
The name of it is The Fish is Red, which was the code word which they used to inform their underground in Cuba that the Bay of Pigs invasion was going to occur that day or week. Well, the film goes into the Cuban operation in some detail because it's the first example of a major paramilitary operation which involved assassinations. It involved destroying the economy, and this is told to you by Richard Helms. It involved blowing up bridges. It involved, as a matter of fact, Richard Helms in the film says, well, why should I have told the Congress about our attempts to assassinate Fidel Castro when we were essentially killing thousands of Cuban citizens in this program that went on in years, and
dengue fever, you know.
Well, really with bullets, not even getting into the exotic things. They were blowing up bridges. They were burning down sugar. They were bombing. There were terrorist attacks. So they were sponsoring. And what's interesting is through all of this, you know, if you talk to Americans, they think like Cuba is such a threat. There has not been, and the CIA has never accused the Cubans of killing a single American citizen in the United States. They have never accused the Cubans of blowing up a single American bridge, a single American industrial plant, and yet they feel perfectly justified to have done this over a period of time.
Ships, oil refineries, they've blown up there, sugar cane, etc.
Chemical warfare, bacteriological warfare.
In fact, now that I think of it, Bill Moyers made a CBS reports called The CIA Secret War, Secret Army, that really documented the U.S. involvement in Cuba. Were there things that he left out there that you thought that...
Well, what he left out was, you know, everyone was surprised to see these people give interviews so freely, but they had the habit of doing it. I mean, the CIA station in Miami for years had been arranging for them to be interviewed because they wanted to create the impression that this was a huge movement. There were all of these Cubans who were just raring to go in and liberate their homeland from tyranny, etc. And so a lot of what the CIA does is it's public relations of that sort. It's really creating the appearance of this huge movement. And everyone was surprised because, you see, I have a lot of the stories which go back to 60, 61, 62, that whole period. Every time the Cuban counter-revolutionary groups or the CIA groups like Alpha 66 had a convention, they filmed it, and there were interviews. And before the Bay of Pigs, I have footage of Cuban nationals going around, giving press conferences, and asking for recruits. Now, in the United States, according to the federal code, that is a criminal offense. You cannot mount. It's something they can put you in jail for 5 years.
You can't recruit foreign armies.
Exactly.
In the country.